Nelson Mandela. 1. Early life and background. 2. Political awakening and ANC involvement. 3. Founding Umkhonto we Sizwe and arrest. 4. 27 years in prison. 5. Release and transition to democracy. 6. Presidency and nation building. 7. Retirement, advocacy, and legacy. 8. Global impact and enduring symbolism. Conclusion. 1. Early life and background. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the village of Mvezo, in the Eastern Cape Province of South Africa. He belonged to the Thembu royal family of the Xhosa nation. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakanyiswa, was a local chief and counselor to the monarch. His mother, Nozakini Fanny, was his third wife. Rolihlahla means pulling the branch of a tree, or colloquially, troublemaker. Mandela's upbringing was rooted in Xhosa traditions and clan values. He herded cattle, played with village children, and absorbed the oral histories of his people. When his father died in 1927, Mandela was placed under the guardianship of Chief Jongantaba Dalindyebo, the acting regent of the Thembu people. He moved to the Great Place in Mkhekezweni, where he was treated as a son and exposed to leadership and justice from an early age. Mandela was the first in his family to attend school. At Haldtown, a Methodist boarding school, and later at the University of Fort Hare, the only university for black South Africans at the time, he was a promising student. However, Mandela left Fort Hare before graduating, in protest against the university's policies and a forced arranged marriage. In 1941, Mandela fled to Johannesburg. There, he worked in mines and as a law clerk, encountering the harsh realities of systemic racial segregation under apartheid. This experience would shape his life's mission. 2. Political awakening and ANC involvement. In Johannesburg, Mandela met Walter Sisulu, a key figure in South Africa's anti-apartheid movement. He also studied law at the University of Witwatersrand, where he encountered activists from a range of racial and political backgrounds. In 1944, Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, a political organization founded in 1912 to promote the rights of black South Africans. That same year, he co-founded the ANC Youth League ANCYL with Oliver Tambo and others. The Youth League advocated for a more radical approach to fighting apartheid, emphasizing mass mobilization and civil disobedience. Mandela quickly rose through the ranks. In 1952, he and Tambo opened South Africa's first black-owned law firm, providing affordable legal counsel to those targeted by apartheid laws. He also led the Defiance Campaign, a peaceful protest against unjust apartheid laws, and became a national figure. Mandela was arrested and banned multiple times, but he refused to back down. His commitment to nonviolent resistance began to waver, however, as the apartheid regime escalated its brutality. By the early 1960s, Mandela and the ANC began to prepare for armed struggle. 3. Founding Umkhonto we Sizwe and arrest. In 1961, Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe MK, meaning Spear of the Nation, the ANC's armed wing. Inspired by liberation movements worldwide, MK began sabotaging government installations to undermine apartheid. In 1962, Mandela left South Africa to gain support and military training across Africa and in the UK. On his return, he was arrested for illegal travel and incitement. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. While serving this sentence, police raided MK's headquarters in Rivonia, discovering documents that linked Mandela and other leaders to plans for guerrilla warfare. The result was the Rivonia trial, which led to international attention. Mandela's speech during the trial's closing statement became legendary. "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." In 1964, Mandela was sentenced to life imprisonment and sent to Robben Island, a remote prison off the coast of Cape Town. 4. 27 years in prison. Mandela would spend 18 of his 27 years in prison on Robben Island. The conditions were brutal: hard labor, minimal contact with the outside world, and psychological abuse. Yet Mandela became a symbol of resistance and dignity. He continued his studies while imprisoned, earning a law degree. He taught fellow inmates, mediated disputes, and honed his leadership. He was allowed one visitor and one letter every 6 months. Even in isolation, Mandela's legend grew. The global anti-apartheid movement gathered momentum, and Free Nelson Mandela became a rallying cry. In 1982, he was transferred to Pollsmoor Prison, and later Victor Verster Prison, where conditions were more lenient. He was able to engage in secret talks with the government about ending apartheid. 5. Release and transition to democracy. By the late 1980s, South Africa was under intense pressure. Internal unrest, economic sanctions, and international condemnation made apartheid unsustainable. In 1990, South African President F.W. de Klerk lifted the ban on the ANC and released Mandela on February 11, 1990. Mandela, then 71, emerged from prison as a global icon of peace and reconciliation. He immediately began negotiations with the government to dismantle apartheid and establish multiracial elections. These talks, though fraught with tension, led to the peaceful transition to democracy. In 1993, Mandela and de Klerk were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. 6. Presidency and nation building. On April 27, 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections. The ANC won a landslide victory, and on May 10, 1994, Nelson Mandela became the country's first black president. His presidency emphasized national reconciliation. He formed a government of national unity, working alongside former enemies to avoid civil war. His message, forgive but never forget. He also established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission (TRC), led by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, which allowed victims and perpetrators of apartheid-era crimes to share their stories in a public, cathartic forum. Mandela's presidency focused on rebuilding institutions, education, healthcare, judiciary, addressing inequality through land reform and housing, promoting racial unity through symbolic gestures, for example, supporting the mostly white Springboks rugby team during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. His leadership inspired the 2009 film Invictus, named after his favorite poem, which symbolized inner strength during hardship. Mandela chose not to seek re-election in 1999, stepping down peacefully and setting a precedent for democratic leadership. 7. Retirement, advocacy, and legacy. After leaving office, Mandela remained active in global humanitarian causes. He founded the Nelson Mandela Foundation, focusing on HIV/AIDS awareness, rural development, and education. In 2003, he launched the 46,664 campaign His Prison Number to raise awareness about AIDS. Mandela met world leaders, supported peace initiatives, and remained a moral voice of justice and dignity. His relationship with figures like Barack Obama, the Dalai Lama, and Queen Elizabeth II reflected his global respect. He published his memoir, Long Walk to Freedom, in 1994, offering a deeply personal account of his life and the cost of leadership. It remains a bestseller and is widely taught in schools. Mandela's health declined in the 2000s, and he retired from public life in 2004. He passed away on December 5, 2013, at the age of 95. 8. Global impact and enduring symbolism. Mandela is one of the most universally admired leaders of the 20th century. His legacy is vast. Political, Mandela proved that peaceful transition is possible, even after decades of violence and oppression. Moral, he modeled forgiveness, humility, and resilience. His example redefined leadership. Symbolic, his name has become synonymous with justice, dignity, and equality. International landmarks, streets, schools, and statues bear his name. Mandela Day, celebrated on July 18, encourages people worldwide to dedicate 67 minutes to service commemorating his 67 years of public service. His legacy also lives on in the Constitution of South Africa, one of the most progressive in the world. Ongoing truth and reconciliation efforts in other post-conflict nations. Movements for racial justice, equity, and nonviolent resistance worldwide. Conclusion. Nelson Mandela's life story is one of struggle, sacrifice, and triumph. From a rural village in the Eastern Cape to the presidency of a divided nation, he walked a long, often lonely path toward freedom not just for himself, but for his people. Mandela taught the world that hatred can be unlearned, that justice can prevail, and that leadership is not about power, but about service. In a century marked by war and division, Mandela stood out as a beacon of peace and humanity. His legacy will endure not only in history books but in every act of courage, compassion, and resistance against injustice. As Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done."